Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. Who or what are you celebrating today? Today, we're going to be celebrating wonder. Wonder in our art, wonder in how we perceive art, and wonder in how we present art. I'm very excited about today's show because I have three people that I love tremendously in this business, and each one of them are coming from a different realm of the business. Our first guest, DC Anderson, today is an incredible actor. He's an incredible songwriter. He's an incredible entertainer himself. Then we have Donald Feltham on the show. I have been on his show a couple of times, the Broadway radio show, which I listen to weekly. And if you follow my newsletter, it's advertised every week in my newsletter. And then there's Paula Heitman, who I've known for a long time, and I finally got her on the show. It's taken a while, but she's here today. And we're going to talk about the work that she's doing with Marquee Studios and a big event that's coming up next week. So before we start, I'd like to begin by giving you a little sample of my friend, DC Anderson. Here he is.
Hello, Bob. How are you, Bob? You know Norman Oppenheimer?
No, I don't.
Very nice to meet you.
This is my wife, Joyce.
It's really very nice meeting you.
I can revoke the card, but it won't do you much good.
Why is that?
He's in the building.
What are those, your special matches or something? You're hiding from me?
My friend gave them to me.
I will give you them back when I'm done. A friend. Who's this friend? Talk to me about this friend. Oh, that's what's important, right? Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He had these stunning blue eyes, like an icy mountain lake, which happens to be where he dumped the bodies.
Don't look at the gun. Reach in your pocket and hand me the keys.
Take them. Good boy. On your knees.
Sal isn't with us this evening. However, I would like to present to you both a copy of his latest book. May our recipes become your family dinners.
Crabby. The Crabby Club. You lying little pig! I fixed it for you! Where did you go with Brent?
I was walking on the street.
I'm asking you a question. Where did you go with Brent?
Hey,
Look who's back.
Marion, you dye your hair?
What? Why?
I don't know, I always think of you as blonde. Hey, can I get a picture?
I participate in the saunas, the massages, another sensual delight.
In case you were wondering, I'm an American.
This is coming to my attention that I've been nominated for an award.
It's late at night. I'm getting better by the minute.
And now a song from my latest CD recording. Let's see. Oh shit, I don't know how to play the guitar.
Am I crazy? A little bit. A little bit.
I painted Dean Maroney when he started as master of Peabody House.
Oh wow, nice.
It's quite a step.
Far be it for me to make assumptions, but I surmise the ladies are from Atlantic Shores Homes, and the gentlemen are from Diesel Realty.
Our reputation precedes us, huh?
Yes, yes it does.
Hello, DC. How are you today?
Hello, Richard. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Is there anything that you can't do? Let's start there.
Yeah. I'm not a technical marvel at all. So I really, all of this is just by the luck of some finger hitting something right. That's all I know.
Well, you bring up an interesting point because for those who are not in the business, once COVID hit, it truly changed the way the industry is done now. And I still, anyone out there who has the power to change this, please listen to me. Stop with the self-tapes. Don't you absolutely hate doing them, or do you enjoy them?
You know, what I enjoy about them is that friends that I've acted with in other shows, I will call them and say, I need a reader, and they'll say, I'll do it. And so the next thing you know, we're on Zoom together, and I'm acting with friends that I haven't acted with in a long time, and seeing friends, and just so I like that community, that sense of community that I get. And I like the fact that I can do a couple of takes. That's always nice. So I I love auditioning. So in any any way to do it is when I was first started out, I had an acting teacher who said to the class, who likes auditioning here? And maybe one person raised their hand. But I didn't at the time. And she said, but she changed my life when she said, well, that's interesting because that's the profession. You'll do more of that than anything else. So make a decision right here, right now, that you're going to love it. And then, and I did. And since then, I've loved it. So it just it gives me an opportunity to be with people. And like Michael Kostroff says in his audition 101 class, Audition Psych 101, is a chance to act on a Thursday. And
That's
so,
right. Absolutely. Well, I love what Demi Moore said when she got a Golden Globe Award about being in the room and meeting the creatives and being in a room. Nothing can ever take away from that.
That's
And to
true.
me, was one of those. It's been years since I've actually gone out and auditioned for a show because I've been doing my own shows. But I was that odd bird who loved the social aspect of going to an audition. I loved conversations that I had with the people around me before I walked into the room. And that always put me at ease. I know there's some people that want to go in and they want to go off into a corner and say, leave me alone so that I can go into that zone. Well, I'm in that zone before I even get there. So the idea of communicating with each other. So what's coming up next for you that you would like to talk about today?
I have an album being released on June 6th called Songs Stay Sung. And then I just have recently released 4 singles. All that's happening in the country today, I sometimes have woken up despairing and thought, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And then I was reading Heather Cox Richardson, the historian, and she said, well, what you can do is to resist whatever it is that you wish to resist at this particular time, to keep it balanced, is go into your joy. And so I thought, I like writing songs, and I certainly have a lot to say. And so I've written 4 songs that address the political landscape that are my recent singles, and I've got 2 more in the pipe. So that's I'm doing that. And then Rit Hen and I are doing, there's in Hastings on Hudson, in the river towns in New York State, there's an organization called River Arts, and they have a music tour. It's on a Saturday, June 14th is this year, and all over the river towns, Ivorytown, or Tarrytown, Dobbs Ferry, Hastings on Hudson, Ardsley, Irvington, there are people singing on their front porches. There are people that are singing in their backyards. Rit and I are singing in a gallery called the Upstream Gallery on June 14th at noon, for an hour. And there's over 150 performances throughout the river towns, maybe 15 an hour. So you get a map and you say, this is what I'm going to go to. And it's wonderful. So we're going to do, this is our 2nd year in a row doing that. So
that's great. Well, I hope it's going on. I live in a river town, Paramount as well.
Oh, you do?
Have you played the Turning Point, by the way?
No, I have not.
Well, we've got to make that happen. Let's
I
talk
would
about
love
that a
that
little later. Well, I'm going to bring on Donald Feltham now. And if I'm not mistaken, I think you actually did Donald's show, didn't you, at one time?
Maybe. I have to go back and look. If it was a long time ago. It was years ago, probably. But I have to go back and look at I have a list of shows. I have to go back and check.
I don't feel like I did, but maybe I did. I don't know. It's nice to meet you today.
Nice to meet you, though.
So Donald, I want to talk a little bit about, you've been on the show before and we've talked about this, we've touched upon this, but you have the Broadway radio show through Haynes' Way, and you've been doing this for how long now?
Oh, God, a long time, since 2001. This iteration of the show has been since 2001. Yeah. So,
what I love about your show is, first of all, the diversity of what we get to hear on your show. It seems to me as if you share the wealth with all types of genres of Broadway music. When people think Broadway show tunes, um,
Mhm.
some people may think Carol Channing, Ethel Merman, Mary Martin, but there's a whole realm of show music that I don't think that the average person is even aware of.
Right. Well, I try and do as much. I try and do a little bit of a mix because I'm these days, especially since pandemic, I get sent a lot of the new releases from publicists. So I'm always trying to focus a lot of attention on newer releases so people know what's currently either playing in London or off Broadway or on Broadway. So I'm playing a lot of new stuff, which is sort of the newer generation of songwriters. But I know since I do sometimes have a younger audience, I also like to make sure that they have some historical perspective. So I also include some shows where I'm going back in time and featuring a lot of older musicals. So, I try and give a wide range of decades that we're covering. And I also like to have a wide variety of guests on the show when I do interviews.
What's your process in terms of putting a show together? I mean, there's so much to choose from. One of my favorite things that I love that you do is when you give us various versions of the same show from
Oh,
various recordings.
when I do putting it together.
Putting it together.
Yeah.
And I will have to tell you, this is Richard Skipper talking. I do miss the soundtrack recordings included sometimes in that, but you are very specific.
Don't include soundtracks. No.
I know you're very specific to theater.
I'm very specific. I know. I generally shy away from soundtracks, and I focus mostly on the stage recordings. Not for any particular reason other than the fact that I want to make sure that, because I think soundtracks generally have a much wider audience, because a lot of times more people have seen the movie versions of musicals, and they may not be familiar with all the different cast recordings that may be out there for the same show, or they may not be familiar with the fact, as you know, both of you probably know, when a stage musical gets adapted for the screen, a lot of songs get cut, and it's not always the same. The score is not always the same. It gets butchered a lot of times. So I usually try and focus on the cast recordings because it really is the more complete score, and I want people to really hear all the songs that were written for the stage version. The hard part, of course, for the putting it together is it has to be a musical that there are enough cast recordings to do it with, because I don't want to do a putting it together where there's only 2 cast recordings. So
most recently, if I'm missing one, let me know. But most recently, I think you did this with Once Upon a Mattress.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's because Once Upon a Mattress was triggered by the fact that the new revival cast recording was coming out. So that sometimes is what triggers me to do a putting it together show, is if there's a new revival recording coming out, then I can feature that songs from that as part of a putting it together. So I can then include it and play doing a putting it together. And if DC doesn't know what putting it together is, it's basically I play the entire score of the show in order, but every track is from a different cast recording. So you're listening from the entire score, but you're hearing it pulled in from all different cast recordings, all put together in one piece. So in Once Upon a Mattress, that's what triggered it. It was that we had a brand new cast, we had a brand new recording of it. So I think there were 4 cast recordings of Once Upon a Mattress I used and put them all together, and we listened to the score complete, but from 4 different cast recordings. And then, of course, it becomes really tricky. Those can be a little bit of a nightmare to put together because I try not to play tracks from the same cast recording back to back. So, and I also want to make sure that in the case of something like Once Upon a Mattress, I want to make sure that I've featured a solo by each Winifred so that we can hear each Winifred solo if it's got 4 different solos. So again, it becomes really tricky of mapping it all out as to making sure everyone gets a featured spot and I'm not using tracks from the same recording back to back, and it can be logistically.
I've got an idea for a show. I'm going to throw it out there. call it Under the Covers. And take a show like Hello Dolly, for example, and each of the songs could be a different artist cover of the songs.
Yeah. Well, I do a lot of I have cover shows that we do because I have a friend in New York who kind of specializes in show tune covers, and he's so good at finding these really, really unique, hard to find cover versions of show tunes. The hard part of doing an entire score of covers is you got to find a show where every single song in the score has been covered, and that's not always so easy. We have done shows where we do nothing but like Sondheim covers or, things like that. But finding a show where every song in the score has been covered, not as easy as you think.
No. If you need help with that, I got an idea.
Okay.
And speaking of someone who's putting it together, she puts it together on a daily basis. Paula Heitman has her own studio, the Marquee Studios, and on Wednesday night, she will be doing a special benefit at 54 Below. It's Neil Berg's. I've noticed he's changed it to 101 years of Broadway. But Neil Berg is Rita, also part of the show.
Yes.
Rita Harvey, his incredible wife. They are local to Rockland County, where I'm sure that's where you met Neil and Rita. But first of all, let's talk about the studio.
Yes.
How the studio came to be and how you got involved.
Okay. So Marquee Studios is actually a little bit of a misnomer because we don't actually have a studio ourselves. What we are a nonprofit arts education organization. So we work with teaching artists. We employ about 80 teaching artists, and that is musicians, dancers, actors, writers, filmmakers. And we partner with the New York City public school system, and we provide arts programming for New York City public schools. And a lot of people say, that's interesting. New York City public schools, New York City, the arts capital of our country, maybe even the world, that has Broadway and the Met and Lincoln Center, do not have comprehensive arts programs in New York City public schools. And I say, I know, that's crazy, right? But it is the sad truth. And it has been that way for decades and decades. Marquee Studios was founded by a man named David Marquis back in the 70s because he and some of his colleagues saw a need. And that need is still very relevant today. I always joke that I love my job. I have the best job in the world. I am one of those people that wakes up every morning and feels very blessed to have my job. But I would really like to be put out of a job. I would like New York City public schools to be funded, and that has not happened. So we have to work through grants and partnerships to help sustain these programs. We do have a contract with the New York City Department of Education, and if there are some schools that allocate some funding, we can contract with them, but we always supplement because I never want to have a school say, we would love to have you, but we can't afford it.
Well, speaking of which, and forgive me for where I'm about to go with this next question, in today's political climate, have you noticed the change?
Very much so. Actually, 2 weeks ago, we received an email from the National Endowment for the Arts, from whom we have received a grant for the last 20 plus years, that our $45,000 grant was terminated. And not for any fault of ours, not for any changes in the program, not because we have failed to do what we said we were going to do, but because the priorities have been changed to align with what the current administration deems is the creativity and history of the arts in our country. And I'm like, providing arts to kids that attend public schools doesn't align with that. it's a really, really difficult time. And there are all these buzzwords of it's unprecedented and this has never happened before and all that. And it's true. It's really unconscionable to me what's happening. The fact that they're defunding the National Endowment for the Arts, it's been around since 1965. It is our national supporter of the arts. But we are entirely committed to continuing. We are going to do everything that we can. Like you mentioned, Richard, we have our annual spring benefit coming up next week. And we have a very tangible goal now. It's $45,000. We need to raise that money to fill the gap that has been lost. And I feel really confident that we will. I mean, everybody that I talk to, of course, I'm preaching to the choir, as they say. All of my friends and family and colleagues are, like you all, involved in the arts and supportive of the idea. But we really need to let people know that this is, it's in the news, but I can tell you personally, it's happening. It's really happening.
And a lot of people are absolutely numb to it. You know, I remember years ago, I was involved as a mentor at Weston High School.
Mm-hmm.
And Weston High School in Weston, Connecticut is a very affluent school.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to get seats for the auditorium. The kids really had to struggle for bake sales and, silent auctions and anything they could do to raise the money. When they wanted to put stadium seating in the sports section,
Mm-hmm.
money was thrown at them.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we learned so much from the arts. DC, I want to ask you, because I know that in addition to so many hats that you wear, you also are a solo artist. Have you been traveling around the country performing? And if so, have you noticed a shift in terms of opportunities?
I actually have not. I've not been, shall we say, overexposed on any stage. Since COVID, I really got into. I moved up to a small town north of the city, and I've really gotten into my garden and the neighbors, and so that's what I spend my time doing. And then I just write songs and record them, and so that's really what I do. I mean, I certainly have noticed the arts organizations to which I am involved have all had the similar thing happen, where they get this letter, the grant is no longer in existence, and it breaks my heart. And so all I know is it's heartbreaking what's going on.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you're all here today, and Paula, I'm glad that you have brought this subject up, because we're in a business that is constantly evolving, and not always in a good way. I was watching an interview the other day with Sharon Osbourne, and Sharon Osbourne was talking about the business end of this business.
Mm-hmm.
She said, for any of us, if we, for example, want to buy a house, we deposit down on the house, we eventually get the house, we pay the mortgage, and the house is ours. But in the profession that has chosen us, we are in a profession where once you start to make headway, everyone else seems to owe you. Own you, not own you. So, for example, doing a show. I mean, it's now on the shoulders of the artist to bring that audience in to see there. Any venue that you're performing in now, they're constantly sending you notifications. And I'm at the Laurie Beachman tomorrow night, and they sent me a list of everybody who bought tickets, and I immediately deleted it and said, if I'm in trouble, let me know. Otherwise, I don't want to know who's bought tickets. I just want to be pleasantly surprised. Let me go in, let me concentrate on my art, and let me do that. And they said, okay, you're not going to get any more of those emails. So I've put together some questions that I want to talk to you, each of you, about the wonder in how you still pursue your own work. And I'll start with you, DC. And the question is, what does the word wonder mean to you personally and creatively?
I think the performing profession, and especially I found in acting, is that the preparation that we do is actually designed so that we can enter that place of wonder, that place of possibility. That's what it's designed for. Because you go to a new job and everything is new. The people you're working with, the place you're sleeping in, the living in, the play, the writers, the other actors. So you really have to be able to say, I'm open. I can do anything. I'm here. I'm just present. And so wonder is and then wonder is that thing that says, not only am I here and present, but let's dig in. Let me see what this is. Let me see who these folks are. Let me see where this town is that I'm living in now. So I think that one of the things I love about the profession of performing is that we're not supposed to know. No one's saying to me, do you know this? Do you know this? Do you know this? They're basically saying, come in open, come in being willing to know, come in being willing to simply breathe, be present, and look at people when you're talking to them, and listen to them, and listen to the music that's happening, and take that in. So, to me, I've prepared for a lifetime of wonder, and that I really appreciate. And I find whenever I am dissatisfied at any point, it's usually because I've shut down my wonder, and it's usually because I'm feeling defensive, because I'm feeling like, can I do this? Is this possible? Is this world a world for me? And so then I just sometimes I write ICDA on the front of my script, which says I can do anything. So that way, then I look at, everyone's have to look at that. So that I never find myself saying, well, wait a minute, yesterday you told me to do this. Now today you're telling me to do that. I'm always like, I did that yesterday. What do I get to do today? So that's sort of where wonder is for me and then as a writer, I like that James Taylor said that he just wrote the song down. He was the first one to hear it and write it down. And that's the way I sort of look at it. So I have to be open to songs coming to me, phrase comes to me, an idea of thought, and then Michael Ventura, this wonderful essayist, was talking about the talent of the room. Once you get that idea, once do you have the talent of the room? Can you sit there and explore it for 8 hours alone in a room? I love that. I love it's like puzzles. So yeah.
That's great. Wonderful. Donald, if someone watching today feels that they are disconnected from the wonder of their art, what they're doing, what would you say to possibly guide them back to finding their wonder?
Oh, I think for me, I think that the best thing I've gotten about what I do, because I used to be a performer, and so I understand exactly what DC said, which is it's really keeping yourself really open. And I think that what I do now, since I'm not performing anymore, it's the same concept, because I'm interviewing people all the time, and I'm listening to new music all the time, and I'm reading books that get sent to me so I can interview the authors. And I read the books cover to cover. I listen to music from beginning to end. I fully immerse myself, because it's really, and I think even in just your daily life, it's really about being fully open to new experiences and getting out of your comfort zone, because those things not only open you up to new experiences, but you ultimately end up learning so much more about yourself, because you are opening yourself up to new concepts, new ideas. You're challenging yourself. You're not always going to like what you see or hear or find out or what you experience, but that in itself tells you more about yourself. So if you are losing the wonder, you just have to get out there and start surrounding yourself with people who are going to start challenging some of you can't cocoon yourself. If you cocoon yourself, you're going to stagnate, and you're going to not succeed as an artist anymore, because part of being an artist is challenging yourself and pushing yourself beyond boundaries that you have. I mean, I think that anybody will tell you that you can't stay stagnant. You won't succeed.
That's great. Wow, what great answers. Paula, what role this is an easy one for you. I mean, you work with these kids all the time. What role does wonder play in connecting you with your students? And can audiences or can your students sense when you're creating from a place of wonder?
I love this question. I mean, I think that I was thinking about my responses to the other questions that you asked, DC and Donald. And one of the ways of keeping wonder alive is constantly exposing, for me personally, is constantly exposing myself to the arts. Last week, a week and a half ago, I went and saw the Pirates of Penzance with a friend of mine. I mean, my gosh, so fun, such energy. And you still get that. I still get that joy and that energy from seeing something like that. And what I realize in terms of working with kids is they're a lot of times having that feeling and that experience for the first time. You know, we are so lucky that, you know, we recognize the feeling, but for kids, you know, sometimes they've never seen a show, or they've never been on a stage, or they've never played a musical instrument. They didn't even know what it felt like to hold a paintbrush. And so the wonder that is inherently in children, I feel like we provide them with the opportunity for that to come out. And there's, in my opinion, there's nothing more beautiful than seeing that happen in a young person. And then being able to sustain that wonder, that's what keeps me going every day. That's what keeps me getting up and saying, okay, fine. NEA money, we've lost it. Okay, that sucks. I'm really angry about that, but it's not going to help me to be negative. I just got to keep moving forward. And then I tell my staff a lot of times, I'll come in and say, okay, I need to go see some kids. Tell me what school, what borough do I need to go to? We're in 150 schools, so there's always an option. Do I need to go to Staten Island? That's fine. I'll drive. I'll pay the $17 toll. I don't care. I need to see some children, and I need to see them experiencing wonder and joy. And that's what keeps me going and keeps me enthusiastic.
Well, Paula, I want to say your dad was a great actor. And
Yeah,
I
he
was
was.
lucky enough to see him on the stage so many times. And he had that.
Yes.
He had that in the way he approached it. He was like that off stage as
Yes.
well. So, you know, so I see where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
DC, how do you protect or nurture wonder in a world that often values productivity over presence?
Whoa. Wow. Oh. I can connect that to so many things, including knowing a casting director who says that, you know, when it's down to 2 or 3 people, we look and see how many, what's the numbers on their socials. And I go, oh, really? Okay. So sometimes I just say, there's really, wow, that's such a great question. And I think I ignore it. I ignore the fact that that is true. That stuff is true. I just try to be in myself and be interested in the things I'm interested in, and if I'm interested in a show, I go for it. You know, or a song I want to sing, I'll sing it. And I sing it wherever I can. You know, if it's only in the shower, it's only in the shower.
And how big is your audience there?
Oh, it's me and who else is in the house, because the shower is very resonant. I really sound like the Metropolitan Opera.
Me too. I love it.
I think that's what I think I sound like.
Yes,
that's
wonderful.
And I just wanted to add something.
Yes,
something to what Paula said about children. I love being with children. And one of the things that I think for me keeps me in wonder, and especially around children, is I had an educator once say to me, with kids, never ask a question you know the answer to. And I was like, well, wait a minute, what are you saying? Are you saying, you know, what if 2 and 2 is 4? And then they say, what do you think 2 and 2 is? Why do you think that? Now, where does that come from? And so you constantly, so I do that to myself in a sense. I try not to always have the answers. Anyway, yeah.
Wow, that's great, because I mean, you always say never ask a question that you don't know the answer to. I love that. Donald, have you ever lost your sense of wonder in your work? And if so, how did you find your way back to it? Or, I mean, if you've lost your sense of wonder, and if so, how did you find your way back to it?
I would say maybe a little bit, because there have been times doing the radio show. There were times where it, just because I had so many things going on in my life outside of the radio show, that it became a chore to do a show every week, and it became a difficult task to do. And at that point, it became work instead of joy. And that is not any. I never like that. Even with a regular job, you don't want the job to be something you're just dreading having to do every week. And interestingly enough, I hate to say it this way, but it turned around because of the pandemic. Because the pandemic totally changed the complexion of the radio show, because everyone was trapped at home, and including performers and writers and artists. And prior to that, getting people lined up to do interviews and things like that was always lots of scheduling issues and traveling, etc. And now suddenly people were trapped, and they had free time to promote things. They were recording in their homes, and they were writing books, and suddenly publicists were clamoring to schedule people, and suddenly the entire focus of the radio show shifted from just being purely music things like putting it together shows like you mentioned, to me doing way more interviews. And suddenly the focus and energy and the enthusiasm I had for doing the show changed because of outside forces, the pandemic. The percentage of shows that were interview shows shifted from previously to from 70% just music shows and 30% interviews to the opposite. So it flip-flopped, and it totally re-energized me and my creativity, and it may just give me a new focus. So it was sort of like outside forces, and I'm thankful for it, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, but it changed the whole focus and gave me a whole new, because I almost pulled the plug on the radio show prior to pandemic.
Wow. That's amazing. I was doing my podcast, and I was doing 7 shows a week, and I burned out. Because I did read every book that was sent to me, and I was very, very prepared. I remember one time I was interviewing Adrienne Barbeau, and she says, "How do you know about that?" I said, "It was in your book."
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, it's just crazy. Paula, how does wonder influence the work that you do, and whether you're dealing with the students or you're dealing with the behind the scenes of putting together a major benefit like the one that's coming up next week?
Interestingly, I just before I came on, I had a meeting with my director of education. And twice a year, we hold a professional development retreat for all of our teaching artists, one in the fall and one in the spring. And one of the things that we're very lucky to do is brainstorm and think about, what do we want our theme to be, or what can we be? And we work with a lot of students with disabilities. That population of students is the most underserved in New York City public schools. And we are very committed to providing our teaching artists with training on how to be more inclusive in how they're teaching. And so when we talk about or think about wonder, we literally in this meeting, we're like, I wonder if we tried, we say that all the time, I wonder if we tried to do this, or what if we thought about presenting it this way? And I think one of the joys of working in the arts and surrounding myself with creative people is that is something that we just inherently do. We think outside the box. We think about, let's just brainstorm. And I always say, no idea is a bad idea. Let's think about that. And in terms of planning for this benefit, we did the same sort of process with my board of directors, because this is the 3rd year in a row that we're having Neil perform and at the venue for 54 Below. And I was thinking that the board would want to do something different. People like to do things, new things. And we had this session and we went through all the things that we liked about last year's show and all the things, that were great moments. And I said, well, let's think, I wonder what it would be like if we did something different. And we did this whole meeting only to come back full circle to say, well, we loved what it was and everyone loved what it was. And it was a celebration of the arts. It was the audience experiencing music and performers, and all of the benefits were towards making sure that this experience translates and continues with students. So I think that my work is fundamentally based in wonder, and everyone that I work with is always thinking about something different, thinking about ways in which to communicate better, thinking about ways in which to share their arts experience and their curiosity with the students of New York City.
That's great. I wish more and more people would think outside the box.
Yes.
And think, how can we make this, this way or that way, instead of this rigid black and white formula that people want to put everybody into sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. DC, how do you keep a sense of wonder alive when the work that you're doing sometimes feels, and maybe this doesn't happen for you, routine, or the industry feels heavy for you?
Breathe. I just breathe. I think that when I'm on stage, I did a show for 18 years once. Well, 18 years, not once. I did it many times. I worked for 18 years, all but 2 weeks a year. And people would say, "Don't you get tired of it? Don't you?" And I never did. I learned how to just breathe, look at people when I'm talking to them, like I was saying earlier, listen to them, listen. If I have an idea, not shut it down. I always feel like for instance, the four of us, we're all in this petri dish or whatever, or whatever. I don't know. We're all, there's chemical here, and if I say, oh, I shouldn't say that. That's stupid. Oh, I don't know. Then I'm taking away from the potential. So I think it's simply by being aware of the potential, knowing about sharing the stage, knowing the story, and making sure that I'm contributing to the story when it's my turn, things like that. Mm-hmm. But basically, just breathing and being alive. I went to see Chicago the other day in New York, like 2 days ago, and oh my God, I realized that this particular production has been running for 30 years. So it's as if when I don't know. It's as if South Pacific was still running. Mm-hmm. In a way, and I from the time anyway. So and I watched it and I saw these performers, and they were so alive and so in their bodies and so in their voices and so present and so interested in telling this story. I was so that's one of the ways that I that sometimes if ever I'm at all feeling like I'm in any sort of routine, but I never do, because it's always different. Mm-hmm. This guy that I worked with, David Cryer, we used to go to the stage every night, and we used to do the walk like this through the hallway, and it was a tour. Most of it, the time it was touring, so we were at least a month in every city, but that meant then at least like 10, 12 times a year, someone would say to us, what are you doing? And we'd say, people say to us, what we do, it's not brain surgery. And we look at each other and go, oh, but it is.
That it is.
And then we'd walk to the stage.
And it's heart surgery.
And it is. And I realized that by doing that, even though it was a joke, in a way it was a joke, but we still did it. Every night we walked to the stage like this. And we would always say, if someone asked, people say, oh, but it is. And then we go onto the stage, and there was just something that brought us to that moment that I really loved, that we could do for each other. And we were always in the world of the play when we were on stage. Anyway, I just stay in the world.
I love that, and I picked up on it as soon as you did that.
Yeah,
it's great. Donald, is there a piece of art, yours or someone else's, that continually inspires awe in you?
Oh, I want that question. That's a good one.
Well, you can all answer that. I like this. Let's all answer.
I don't know. It's probably, there are certain paintings and pieces of classical music and stuff that I never get tired of. And I guess that's probably what you might mean. There are definitely some pieces of art that just never get old to me. There are certain, like I said, whenever I go to New York, I always go to the Met, and I always spend an afternoon or a morning wandering around the Met, seeing the latest exhibit. But I also always wander the galleries, and even though I've seen many of those paintings and sculptures and stuff, I still will see them again, and I'm still in awe of the work. And there are also pieces of classical music that they'll come on my radio in the car, and I'll still listen to them over again. It's sort of, and there are, and it's the same with some pieces of, musical theater pieces that I can still listen to. I think that's the joy of the business we're in, is that that's what makes this stuff so wonderful for us, is that people write these things that you can listen to forever and ever and ever, and that just doesn't get old.
I remember hearing an interview many, many years ago. Billie Holiday was asked about songs that she has made famous and how she feels about other people doing those songs. And she says, once I've done it, I've released it to the world. And I'm one of those people, those who know me know how I've chronicled the history of Hello Dolly. But what I love is about what each woman, and sometimes a man, has brought to the role and how they make it their own. And that's what I'm looking for when I go to see, God bless Danny, my husband, how many productions he sat through. He can say it by heart now, but he goes, not again. But it's what each person brings to the role. And I love the differences that someone finds in it. And sometimes I will hear a line that I've heard 100 actresses say, and I'll go, I'm hearing that for the first time. That is different there. So, Paula, what is the piece of art that inspires you?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me that, Richard. West Side Story. I listen to the soundtrack on my Alexa all the time. I've seen so many, and all the reasons you said, so many different productions of it, from Broadway to revivals to high schools to just scenes and everything. Every time I see it, it's something different. It's still as exciting. I think the story, obviously it's, based on Romeo and Juliet, but it's still a universal theme of belonging or immigrants or who you are and what you are and people trying to keep you from being who you are. And it's, and love triumphing. I just think that, it's a piece, and you think about the choreography and the dancing and thinking back to when it first came on the stage, and it was just blew everybody's mind and it was groundbreaking. I took my kids to see it whenever the last time it was on Broadway, maybe, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. And I was trying to explain to them how this was just so groundbreaking. And they were like, yeah, it's like gangs, And I'm like, yes, but it's,
I can hear Sabrina now.
Oh my gosh. Yes, my daughter is very, she's not a shy one, that's for sure.
She's not a shy one. We had a dinner party here one night, and she was the youngest one in the room, and she held court.
Yes.
She had everybody eating out of the palm of her hand. Just amazing. Yeah. DC, same question. Is there a piece of art that resonates with you that brings you awe every time you see it or hear it?
I think it's some of the great scores, the Overture to Gypsy, the Overture to Candide, the sometimes, and just in the music of Gypsy, I every once in a while, before I go to bed, I'll do a Rose's Turn off. I will go from one to one to one to one and see, and I catch and I learn new things about the song from each person singing it. Like I'll never forget when Liza Minnelli, when she did it, and she said, "Get off of my runway."
Yes.
And I thought, oh my God, I've never heard that probably. Get off of my runway. Get off of my runway. And I was like, holy shit. And she's
Yes.
heard that. But you know what I mean? I mean, just things like that. These moments, Andrea Marcovici singing Some Enchanted Evening and saying, you know, that somehow you know, even then, that somewhere you'll see her again. And I was like, oh my God, that's the whole song. And I've never heard anyone do that. Everyone else, like, you'll know even then.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
well, a few weeks ago, Donald had Frank Dane on his show. And Frank Dane, as a matter of fact, has a show tonight in New York. And I went to see a show, and Frank's husband, unfortunately, was one of the first casualties of COVID. And as a matter of fact, he passed away on my birthday. And every song that Frank sang in the show, even though he did not bring attention to this, I tear up thinking about it. Every single song resonated in a different way for me than I had ever heard any of those songs before. And that's the brilliance of art. And we are wrapping up in a moment, but I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. And for everyone who's watching, a couple of things. Think of this as a poo-poo platter. Go out and Google each of these people. Google the Paula and the Marquis Studio and the work that they're doing there. Really check into what they are bringing to the table. On Facebook, not on Facebook, on YouTube, please leave a comment about today's show. Share this with your friends. Hit the like button if you do indeed like the show, because what that does is that increases the ranking of where this video shows up in the search engines. I'm going to give each of you a chance to have your final word today. It could be about anything that we spoke about today, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any final message that you want to leave everyone with. But I'm going to throw a little another question into this. So think about this when you talk about your final word today. And it's for each of you to recall a moment in your artistic life that filled you with pure wonder and what that moment was. So think about that as we wrap up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my final word today. And then, Paula, I'm going to turn it over to you. And when you finish, you'll pick the next person. And when the last person says goodbye, I will end the show. I end all of my shows with the same message. And that's to go out and do something nice today for somebody else without expecting anything in return. All of us get emails. So the second email that you get today from someone that you know, rather than responding with an email, pick up the phone and call that person. Have a conversation with that person. I know we're all busy. It takes just a few minutes to do something like that. I have a dear friend, Sean Moniger, and he says we're all in the same storm, but we're in different sized boats. And I always say, I don't care what size boat you're on, as long as you have a skipper by your side. And everyone go out and seek the wonder of today. And Paula, I'm turning it over to you. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you, Richard, for this time. So the moment for me that I can think of that sparked wonder in me was I was probably in high school. And as Richard mentioned earlier, my dad was an actor. We lost my dad about 5 years ago. But my dad was an actor and I'd seen him in a lot of shows. And I always felt like I was seeing, oh, there's my dad on stage. But he was in a play called The Immigrant, which was produced up at the Penguin Theater, which is in Rockland County in Stony Point. And he was in the show. And at one point, his character gets ill and he comes out in a wheelchair. And I was filled with this sense of wonder because I didn't see my dad, I saw Milton, the character, and it was so impactful on me that the power of the arts that took me out of seeing my dad on stage and saw this character and experienced the story, that I really feel like that was the quintessential moment in my life when I thought, well, I'm going to be involved in the arts and theater and make sure that this kind of feeling gets shared with kids and students. And I became a teacher and a teaching artist and found my way here. So yes, like Richard said, please, if you believe in the arts and you believe in New York City public schools and you think that every kid, regardless of income, ability, or country of origin, deserves access to high quality arts programming, please come to our benefit. Please come next Wednesday, 54 Below. And I'm going to turn it over to Donald.
Okay, thank you, Paula. And I want to repeat exactly what she said. Right now, it's so important to be supporting the arts. They're in desperate need of our help. So I encourage you to, and if you are in New York, to attend Paula's benefit. And also exposing kids to the arts is really, really important. I stress this with all of my friends because a lot of schools don't provide arts education these days. And I'm always also telling people to take their kids to the theater and get them involved in theater, which leads me back to my most important memory of wonder, which was probably, it must have been in the early 1970s when I was a kid. I had actually been doing children's theater, performing in children's theater at the time, and doing local theater. But it was the first time I had been taken to the national tour of a big Broadway show. And it was the national tour of Sugar with Robert Morse and Tony Roberts and Gail Gordon and Leland Palmer. And it was the first time I had actually seen a big Broadway production of a show. I'd been in musicals, but they were like local community theater productions. And this was the first time I'd seen a big Broadway production. And it absolutely blew me away. And from that moment on, I knew that I would always be involved with theater in some way. And it hooked me completely that I was going to be involved in theater. And I have been ever since, whether it's been performing or producing or writing or working backstage. And it's helped me throughout my life, non-theater related items, being a wonderful speaker and standing up in front of audiences and doing training sessions for things. And that's why I think encouraging people to get their kids involved in theater and involved in the arts is so important. It builds self-confidence. And so I highly encourage you to get involved in arts education, whether it's donating or actively being involved. So that's my sense of wonder, was being taken to seeing Sugar and how it really became the linchpin in me actually getting involved in the arts. So I am now going to turn it over to DC, and thank you, Richard, for having me on the show.
Thank you, Donald. There was a moment, I just was taking a dance class with a woman named Nana Soldrig, and she changed it to Nana Sinaflug. People may know her. I was taking a dance class with her, and what I loved about her class is it had to do a lot about breath, a lot about, we made sound when we danced, but she one time had us going back and forth across the floor with a combination that was the same combination each time we went across. And she stopped us after the 7th time across the floor, and she said to us, what I'm seeing right now is I'm seeing quite a lot of attempts to recreate what you did the first time across the floor. And I just want you to know that I'm as interested in what 7 times across the floor does to the movement and does to you as I am the first time you cross the floor. So you never need to be in the act of recreation. And I went boom in my head, and I've tried to live that ever since. So that's a way to stay in wonder and to recognize that every moment is about creation and doesn't ever need to be about recreation. That's it.